hi there to all the moms, therapists, teachers, professionals. It's lovely to see you again, and we have the privilege today to talk to you about a very important topic called concentration difficulties. So for those of you who don't know us yet, my name is Marene Jooste. I'm a registered kinderkineticist and mother of two.
I'm Marene Jooste, an educational psychologist and also a mom. We're both in private practice where we see a lot of parents that has kids that struggle with concentration. We do, however, also see that it's not always a clear-cut ADD or ADHD, but that the concentration is often a symptom of something else. So today we want to take you through a few things that could look like attention difficulties, where the attention is actually a symptom of something totally else.
Yeah, completely different. I'm thinking the first thing that pops into my mind is sensory related.
Yes.
And I know if I say senses, you guys think of the 5 senses. You actually have 11 senses. And I don't have time to jump into that. But at our practice, we look at 7 senses, and 2 of those are hidden senses that you guys are not maybe most familiar with unless you're a teacher or professional. And that is something that we find that has a huge effect on a child's concentration difficulties. Now, one is situated in your ear, which is in layman's terms called your balance system. And then the other one is the proprioceptive system, which is in layman's terms your muscles. Now, if any of those aren't working correctly, you get a child that's like a razzmatazz. They can either be very busy and very active, or you can get to the other side where they're very sluggish and very, I almost want to say, pathetic is not the right word.
They can't support themselves. Am I right, Marene? So if you see this child in the classroom, you will see a child that's slouching, a child that cannot hold their body up. They're using a lot of energy to constantly adjust themselves to activate these muscles so that they can stay upright. They don't have energy left for concentration. They cannot plan. If I don't know where my body in space is, where every body part sits, how my muscles come together, I can't plan my work on a page.
Yes.
That makes it very difficult to succeed in written work.
I'm thinking now, for instance, your vestibular system, which is your balance system, is way more than balance. It affects your muscle tone, it affects your arousal levels, how you can feel excited or calmed down by it. It goes through your brain, through your cranial system, your cranial nerve, and that causes a child to also experience then attention difficulties. And that is affected by middle ear infections, for instance. And so many children nowadays sit with mid-ear infections. We're talking about children with reflux. We see a lot of children in the practice with reflux causing other, I almost want to say, developmental delays indirectly if it's not addressed, because that again can lead to middle ear infections. And that goes back to your sensory system. So it's all a vicious cycle. Think of your tactile system, which is your touch, your skin. So if you find that there's a child who's constantly agitated by the little tags in their clothes or the shoes, oh man, that is a constant battle. So that in itself, if you need to sit and concentrate and listen to the teacher, but you constantly feel the desk under you or against where you sit against the chair, that causes you not to focus, and that's only the symptom of something else. It's not ADHD. It
comes down to regulation.
Yes.
To regulate yourself. If a child is so busy with all of these things, they just cannot regulate themselves. And if you can't regulate yourself, can't calm yourself down, you cannot focus and concentrate. And a classroom setup is often you have to sit down and you have to block out all the external things that's happening around you, and you have to concentrate on what you need to do, which is very difficult, nearly impossible for a child that has some sensory issue.
If there's sensory difficulties and the processing part of it and the integration part of it, then it's very difficult for such a child to focus. Think of yourself walking into a mall. over Christmas time, where it's jingle bells, and
busy.
and
People
everyone is
next to
against
you.
yeah,
Yes.
and it's loud, and it's it's just overwhelming. So at the end of the day, that's exactly what your child also experienced. Even young toddlers. Remember, neurologically, we as adults. I'm turning 40, so I had 40 years time where I can train my brain how to relate to the sensory experiences. But now as a young toddler, they still need to train their brains and get used to all the sensory input and how they're going to react to that. So all of that can also lead them to concentration difficulties, or in someone else's eyes, a busy child, for instance. So sensory
overload.
Exactly, the sensory overload. Again, sensory profiles are different from one child to another, and that's why we need to see professionals in that regard. But that's something that popped in very quickly. I'm thinking of emotional stuff,
Yes.
your trauma. No?
So emotional difficulties and trauma can lead to concentration difficulties. If you are stuck in your survival brain because you need to survive this situation, you cannot go to your upper brain where your thinking and your
Yes.
organization and your planning happens. Those are all terms that makes you successful in school, in the school setup, in school work. You need to plan, you need to concentrate, you need to be able to access your upper brain to do your schoolwork and to concentrate sufficiently. So then we need to look at that trauma, and we need to address the emotional difficulties before we can even start to think about ADHD or ADD. We need to go into therapy then. And remember that trauma for a child can be something that you think it means nothing. It can be a pet that died. It can be something serious like a divorce, moving house, the death in
Grandmother.
a family. Yes, that can be very traumatic for a child, but never underestimate something that you deem small. In a child's life, that can be a trauma.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, even the situation with COVID that we found ourselves in, with lockdown, and what happened with us being confined to a small space, that added stress to the family and to the children as well.
Change,
Yes.
Marene, change
Oh.
is difficult. Change
Yes.
can be traumatic.
Yes, especially for the children. And remember, the children nowadays, they hear everything we say. They hear the news, they watch the news, they hear and they listen to what we talk, how children get abducted, etc. So that also adds another layer of stress. And remember, if you're stressed or anxious up to a point where your cortisol levels are so high, your brain can't think straight because of the cognitive capacity that is compressed almost by the stress. It's literally not good for your brain to stress. So children experiencing stress is then experiencing attention difficulties, but then it can be pulled back to the emotional part of things.
Yes, and a child can pick up on your stress. So mom, teacher, whoever you are, if you are stressed, this can lead to anxiousness in the child,
Yes.
which can display as a concentration difficulty.
Yes.
The next thing is, what did we talk about?
Yeah,
Reflexes.
reflexes.
Marene, you
Yeah.
are the expert on reflexes, and she has written a beautiful course about reflexes. So if you are a therapist or a mom or a teacher that thinks that maybe you can help a child through addressing their reflexes, look at this course on Edupro. It's really very helpful and practical, with practical exercises. Do you want to tell us about how
Yeah, let's quickly-
reflexes can affect
A short
concentration?
little bit, just so that you can get an overview of exactly what a reflex is. Now, if you think of a reflex, it's something that happens reflexively. It's automatically. You don't think about it. It just happens. So when a baby is born and you put the dummy in their mouth, then suddenly they start sucking the dummy. No one taught them beforehand. They just know how to do it. Now, that's the function of especially primitive reflexes. It helps a baby to survive. It helps his muscle tone to develop, etc. There's many benefits to reflexes. But reflexes that stays or it doesn't go away, that is where it causes the brain to function at the bottom and not at the top. So at the top is where your CEO sits and where you need to make decisions. So especially in the case with primitive reflexes, you literally start functioning from the back of your brain. And that happens without you purposefully doing it. So what we do at the practice, we test the children for reflexes, and if there are any reflexes, there's easy exercises to do with them in order for the reflexes to go away. Now, why does reflexes appear and go and
reappear?
Yes, and reappear. Stress makes reflexes reappear. Trauma. Think of an accident where someone ends up in hospital and the doctor is doing this typical test under the feet to check for the reflexes. That is to determine where exactly the damage occurs in the brain. Now, reflexes can stay because of allergies. It can be due to, at that exact moment when the reflex had to go to sleep, that your child got sick. Or there's so many reasons why it can actually stay. That is in the course. What we actually just want to say is if there is still primitive reflexes and it's still evident in a child's life, that can also cause difficulties in concentration.
Definitely. And it's not capped at a certain age. A child can have a primitive reflex reappear when they're 8, 9, 10,
Yes.
40.
Yeah.
Whenever there was a traumatic event or a very stressful event. So if your child had a serious injury, you have to check the reflexes.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And things like allergies, ne? We should
Yes.
think of medical things also interfering, like rhinitis, sinusitis, allergies, and not only food allergies, like seasonal allergies that comes and goes as well. Remember, your brain gives priority to your body to first get the healing before we can go on to concentrate on what the teacher is saying. So if there's anything like a postnasal drip, or like Miranda says, you have a sniffling child in the class that's constantly coughing and, a runny nose, have a look at that, because that has a huge influence on a child. From a medical point of view, I'm thinking now, for instance, if a child has a nutritional deficiency, like a zinc deficiency. There's so many macro and micro deficiencies that can occur.
Omega deficiency.
Yes.
So the brain has neurons which is isolated through omega fatty acids. And it's very difficult to get your child, even yourself, to eat enough of that or to get enough through your diet. So you have to have something extra. You have to give them extra omegas.
And at this stage, we can't all eat fish 3 times a week.
Yeah.
So we need to look at supplements in that case. So if a child has an iron deficiency, for instance, that can also lead to concentration difficulties. Magnesium. There's so many. Nutrition is a topic in itself. What we do want to say is don't run into Dis-Chem and suddenly just go and buy everything and start supplementing your child. Nutrition is still the first choice, so proper nutrition. So if you have a picky eater, try and sort that out as well, because that can also be a symptom of the concentration difficulties.
And not just a picky eater. Let's face it, your kids eat fish fingers. Your kids eat vihannas. They
White
eat it at
bread.
school, they eat it at home. It's easy, they don't complain. So we all do it.
Yeah.
But that's not the right brain food.
Yes, so sugar. I'm quickly thinking of sugar, for instance, where sugar breaks down the myelin, or the sheets that's protecting your brain. So sugar is detrimental, for instance, in that case. It lowers your immune system. And again, we don't slap you over the finger because of sugar. I am a mother, she is a mother. I have a child that had concentration difficulties. So I'm not only saying all of this in a professional capacity, it's also from a personal experience capacity. We have tried and tested every single thing in the book, and we'll get to the good news at the end of it, but really try and look at proper nutrition. And if you need to, go and see a nutritionist or a dietitian at the end of the day in order to ensure that your child gets good nutrition.
No, and don't ignore allergies. I've got 2 kiddies that has severe allergies, and it made such a difference when we sorted that out. And I could really see the development that had a boost through sorting out the allergies.
Yeah.
So now we know of a few things that could look like attention deficit. But now we need to think of what we can do. Where do we start? So we always start with the physical. We have the eyes check, the ears check, the function and the structure of everything. Do your child hear what you're saying? Can they hear well, but can they also interpret that correctly? Is the input accurate? Is what the brain makes of the information accurate? And is the output then also accurate? So we need to look at all of those functions and to make sure that there's not a lapse in the process, or that there's not a breakdown in something that can display as attention deficit.
Definitely. We see a lot of times where children go, for instance, to the optometrist and they come back and they say, my child has 6/6 vision. And that's the structure part of things. But then your eyes also need to function together. They need to work together correctly. The same goes for the ears. You can hear, but are you listening? And that's where she says the processing part of things needs to also fall into place. So we need to make sure that your child can see, hear, that's easy. And then we also need to make sure medically that they are fine, that they're healthy. But then we also need to look at lifestyle. And we need to eliminate and make sure that we tick all the boxes. And again, guys, this is not a should and shouldn't. It's not a black and white. We don't want to add more stress to your life. We want to help you in the process. So we at the practice always run through something called New Start, the acronym. So we always start. N is for nutrition. So we touched based on that, Anna. Then E is exercise. And E, exercise, I can talk an hour about that, but the long and the short of it is, if you exercise, your brain gets oxygen. It helps you to feel good, so there's endorphins released, and it helps you to concentrate better. You also get something called BDNF, so they call it miracle grow or fertilizer for the brain. So it helps the brain to sprout and to actually grow into a bigger, better brain. So exercise in itself, all thumbs up for it.
So get your kids moving. The more they move, the better the brain will develop.
Yeah. So when we talk about concentration difficulties, we say make sure that if there is a concentration difficulty, is it maybe because of screen time? You know, is it a lack of movement, in other words, because of too much screen time? I mean, there's many reasons. It can be that your child doesn't like to move, but then go for a walk. We'll talk about screen time more in depth, because that definitely has
that's a topic on its own. And we can say a lot about that.
Yeah.
But with the exercise and the lockdown now, where all the extramurals were cancelled and there was no sport participation, I've heard of kids that really lacked movement because of the restriction that we had with this lockdown. So that's a very, very important thing, because not only does it help with concentration, it helps to address the depression that we see under the kids.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then we're going to go into W.
Water. Okay, so your brain and your body is made up of water. We need to drink enough water. We need to get our kids used to water. Not all kids like water, but if you are privileged enough to have a small child, when you hear this, teach them to like water. Give them water before you give them cool drink, before you give them tea. They are a blank page. You can teach them what they like. So give them the right things. Give them water.
Remember, 70% of our bodies? Water. We need water. Good, proper water.
Your brain can only function if you are hydrated. You can only concentrate if you are hydrated. If you get a headache because of dehydration, you cannot concentrate. And kids get dehydrated so easily.
Definitely. So S stands for sunlight. And that is something we neglect. And we also take it for granted. We think, oh, goodness, that's a given. We don't realize the importance of sunlight, especially living in Africa. We do have beautiful sunny days where the children can go and run outside, compared to England, where a lot of people struggle with depression. But remember, there's a lot of vitamin D that's for free in sunlight. And that helps your child to also be outside and to be in the nature and to exercise. And in all of that, your child gets the benefit of better concentration. Don't throw sunlight out.
Yeah, I might be a little bit of a culprit there because I run behind them with the sunblock, and not to say you have to let them burn. So just use your
common knowledge,
common sense.
common sense. But that is where the T of new start comes in. Temperance. So we need to have temperance in everything we do. The average of things. There's something like too much or too little. Hey, so we need to keep that in mind. Again, screen time, is it bad? No, we parents, we have our children watching TV now and again. It's the too much screen time that can be detrimental, especially with regards to concentration. The same with sun. Too much sun is going to end up in blisters and a child crying sitting in the bath, you trying to fix out a red skin. So don't do too much of something as well as too little.
I think we can apply that to everything,
Yeah.
even with nutrition. Too much sugar, no.
Yes.
Too little sugar might make them crave something or, overeat when they do get something.
Yeah.
So just don't do too much or too little of anything.
Yeah. So the A for new start is air. So we need to make sure that we have enough fresh air. And again, think of a classroom where it's stuffy and all the rooms are closed in, no windows are open. And you can feel that when you open the classroom and you fetch your children. When they had a room that's hot and stuffy, you can immediately feel the temperature change as well. And what happens is a child gets drowsy, hey, in too hot of a room as well. So they really battle, and there's so much research about fresh air and the benefit to that. We're going to put all of the research and all of the benefits in the links below as well in the comments. And then we obviously need to look at the R of New Start, which is rest. And sleep again, super, super important. Think of Walt Disney. The Walt Disney or New Disney, is it New Disney, Walt Disney? What
Disney
is it?
World.
Disney World. There you go, I want it. It's Disney World. So during the day, a lot of people go and visit Disney and they go and have so much fun, but they throw stuff around and they litter. And then at night, when everyone else sleeps, there's a team coming in to clean up the park. Now, the exact same thing happens with our brains. When we do sleep, all of the clutter and the junk is cleaned out, which our brains don't need, and then we can rebuild our brain. So if a child does not get enough sleep, then they sit with concentration difficulties. I was so shocked. Our principal told us the other day of grade 7 children falling asleep in the maths class. And then when he asked them, they were like, no, we were up playing games till 12 o'clock at night. So it goes to show you, obviously that is now an obvious symptom of not enough sleep. But please make sure that if your child's a snorer, for instance, you should not have a child that's snoring. Have a look at overgrown adenoids or tonsils or something keeping them from having a proper restful sleep. Please don't do screen time before sleeping time, because that also does not allow your child's brain to shut down effectively and go into the deep restful sleep that they need.
Yeah, I think it's about quality sleep. So if you want your child to have a quality of sleep and rest well, they have to breathe properly while sleeping. That's those adenoids and tonsils, and they should go into their deep cycle of sleep. They shouldn't lay awake for hours before they can manage to switch off their brain to go to sleep. That's why we can't have screen time for, about 2 hours before bedtime. You should have no screens. That includes tablets, phones, television. We need to protect the quality of their sleep.
Definitely. The last one, the T, I'm going to keep for the very last. But we can wrap it up. We can do a summary and say, goodness, there's a lot, as you can hear. And we haven't touched, goodness, there's quite a lot of other subjects that we can still throw in. But as you can hear, there's quite a lot of things that can cause concentration difficulties. We want to say, however, it's not to say that medicine is a complete no-no. Please don't feel judged in any way if you did go the medicine route. We benefited a lot from seeking professional help in that sense, and our child is currently taking medicine, and he is doing wonderful in school. He's happy. We obviously took all of this into account. We did have a look at our lifestyle. We put stuff into place. We looked at nutrition. It's everything we talked about now. And still we needed that extra bit. So we don't condemn medicine. We do feel, though, that between the two of us and the practices, that a lot of children get over-identified or over-diagnosed with ADHD. And that's why we have decided to have this talk.
So if you take medicine for the right reason and for the child that really needs this, it's a wonderful thing. If they need it, you have to give it to them, because otherwise they feel out of control and they feel like they don't have control over their own bodies, over their own minds. And it's very frustrating. And then you get secondary symptoms and problems like poor self-esteem, a belief that I'm not good enough, that I can't succeed, that I'm not clever, which is completely untrue. But for that child, it's his or her reality, and we need to protect them from that as well. So these are a few practical things that you can do. You know now that there's several things that can look like attention deficit disorder, which could be something else. So you have a few places to start off with, a few places that you can examine. You can take your child to the doctor, have a look at the physical, and then you need to put those lifestyle things into practice, because a lot of problems can be resolved through those things. Although it sounds basic, and although it sounds like everyone knows this, I've seen how much a child can change with just those few things. So remember your acronym, your new start, and please apply that. And then if all else fails, seek professional help. Never feel like you shouldn't. Never feel like you are going to be judged for using medicine. If you need professional help, if your child needs medicine, if you need parent guidance, if you need parent guidance, get what you need, because it will change your life. And then to end off the T, Marene?
For us, it was trust in God. We had to put our trust in God and say, we've done everything we could, and now we're releasing it. Otherwise, we go into this anxious, panicky state where you continually run around the tree over and over again. And we found that we had to anchor ourselves and just put our trust completely in Him. Even our boy, he's at that age now, he's 12, where he can say, Mom, I realized X, Y, Z, but this is where I am starting with. That's the foundation. Now, like Marina says, if you're not a Christian, find something that you can put your trust in, so that you can have a solid foundation to build from. If that is family and friends that support you. For me, being a child of God and a Christian, it was super important for us to keep the focus on the main thing, so to speak, and from there on tackle it and pray for Him and for wisdom along the way.
You have to ground yourself. You have to find your support. You have to get your calm in the storm. And I think that is your T, your trust, your calmness, to just not go into that downward spiral of everything being too much and you ending up depressed because of the situation with your child.
And we would love to hear from you as well. This is, again, we don't want to put something around your neck and say you have to and you should to. And, this is a conversation. We wanted to put it out there to say, please make sure that your child gets help if they really struggle with ADHD, but also in the other sense, make sure that it is truly ADHD. Until we speak again next time, please leave us some comments. Tell us what you have experienced. We loved talking to you today. And until we speak again, blessings and goodbye.
Goodbye.